Hello everybody, welcome to Mondays with Mover. I am Mover C.W. Lemoine, author of the Spectre series and now the Alex Shepard series, Absolute Vengeance, and I am the Sheepdog. If you're reading it this weekend, I hope you're enjoying it. It was a lot of fun to write it. Today I'm doing a little something a little different. It's Memorial Day, and everybody talks about what Memorial Day is about. People sometimes confuse it with Veterans Day, but today is a day, besides barbecuing and swimming and going to the pool and hanging out with the dogs, it's a day to remember those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice, given the price of freedom, which is not free, with their lives. I just want to honor those that have come before, and especially those that I've lost in my life, in my career. It's an old fighter pilot tradition. Nickel on the grass to save a fighter pilot's ass. It's actually part of a song from Vietnam, but the idea is that it's the nickel on the grass to pay the toll to cross the river Styx. So you may hear that in between these, and him. So first one of the first ones in my career, I was in the B course, F-16 school, flying down at Luke, and a good friend of mine, First Lieutenant David Jenks Mitchell, we were both the reserve bubas. He was going to the Guard, I was going to the Air Force Reserve to fly F-16s, and he was going to the Ohio Guard, and as we often do, the Guard guys kind of band together, because that's just, we've got that in common, and we both kind of knew where we were going. We knew our assignment, we knew what was happening. So we were hanging out, and he was a good friend of mine, especially, when it came to, we'd go practice in the sim, and, we would talk about, what Guard life was like, and what it would be like when we finally got out of Air Education Training Command, AETC. But on March 14, 2008, Dave, his F-16 crashed. He G-locked. He was doing high aspect BFM, so they were dogfighting, and he lost consciousness. It was a very long set for him. It was probably the third engagement, I think, and he lost consciousness and did not eject. So he left behind his wife Christy and his unborn son Braden. And that was a pretty trying time for everybody. Dave was a good guy. So, Dave, here's to you, my friend. The world's a lesser place without you. Nickel on the grass, man. Also, I'd like to talk about Major Blair Bama Faulkner, who was a mentor of mine. He was, when I originally met him, he was A10 guy down at the 706. That's who originally hired me, and he was kind of a mentor for me. He was, I was a student hire, and he was working there as a technician, flying A10s, and he always used to call me Hollywood because I would dress nicely. I was always in khaki and polos and stuff, and he was a mentor. He was. Not only as I was coming up as a student hire, but before that or after that, when I went to pilot training, and the last time I ever talked to Bama, he had moved on, because obviously the A-10 squadron in New Orleans went away. He had moved on. He was flying T-38s at Columbus, and I was talking to him about IFF, Introduction to Fighter Fundamentals, which I struggled with initially. I'd done well in pilot training, and I get to IFF, and it was this huge culture shock. And I remember talking to him on the phone for 30, 45 minutes at a time, and he was always very patient and very I was just a young pilot that didn't know anything, and he always said, "Hey, look, it's going to be okay. Everything's fine. This is just a game." And not long after that, less than a year, April 2008 is when he was on takeoff with a student, and aileron. There was an issue with the ailerons on the T-38 at the time, and the aircraft rolled, and they attempted to eject, and it failed. So, good man, again, left behind a wife and children. So, the world's a lesser place without him too. So, here's to you, Bama. Him. So in June of, or in 2008, I also met a really great guy. He was in the class behind me. His name was his call sign was Ice. It was Captain George Bryan Haughton, who was a friend of mine. He was actually a friend of a friend, but we used to go shooting together down at Luke at Scottsdale, and he was lost in a training crash on June of 2009. His F-16 crashed down at Hill, and it was at the Uter there, and it's one of those things. Another great guy that the world's a lesser place without. So to you, Ice. Major Ben checks Myer. Didn't know him that well beyond flying with him down at the Makos. He was an active duty guy that came down and flew with us as he was getting ready to go to weapons instructor school, or the weapons instructor course. He passed away at Edwards Air Force Base. He was jogging, of all things, and he was hit by a car. He was going to go fly the F-35, and he donated his organs. He was an organ donor, so because of him, other people are living, and obviously, his service to our country. But it was pretty hard for everybody that knew him, because he was a really good guy. So to you, checks. And most recently, you guys may remember Major Taj Cabby Serene. Another guy that I knew through pilot training. I met him advance. He always he had a Corvette at the time. It was the coolest car, back when C5s were still a thing. And he was a car guy and really nice guy. Had the best parties. And he died after a 7-month deployment. Coming back, he was at Lake and Heath and had navigation INU failure that went to standby in the weather, and he crashed. I believe they were rejoining with the tanker, but it doesn't matter. The man had been serving, his country, left behind a family, and he paid the price for freedom. So, Cabby, here's to you, my friend. In addition, that's even a small list compared to the number of people that have paid the ultimate sacrifice or paid the ultimate price for freedom. So this Memorial Day, just think about it. Take a moment. Remember those who've given their lives and sacrificed, and their families, especially their families. All these, every single one of the people I've mentioned, and even the people that have crashed in the last few years or been killed in combat or in any service. There's families. They leave behind families. It's not just their sacrifice, but the sacrifice of those that they love that are losing a loved one. So we thank them for their sacrifices, and we hope that their families find comfort in the fact that they were paying a great price for our freedom. So that's it for this episode of Mondays with Mover. Hope you enjoy your barbecue or whatever you got going on. If you're on Florida, you're probably getting drenched by this tropical storm, but I hope you're tied down and ready for that. But I'll see you guys next week. We'll have the Mover mailbag will be the whole episode. One of the biggest questions I always get is, how did you become a fighter pilot? Why did you become a fighter pilot? How can I become a fighter pilot? So I'm going to answer those questions in next week's episode. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you next week.